For thousands of years, diverse indigenous nations thrived across North America's vast landscapes. Pacific Northwest tribes built cedar longhouses beside salmon-rich rivers and forests. Southwestern peoples constructed multi-story adobe pueblos in dramatic desert canyons. Great Plains nations hunted vast bison herds across endless rolling grasslands. Eastern woodland tribes formed powerful confederacies in fertile river valleys. Extensive trade networks linked distant tribes across thousands of miles. Spiritual ceremonies honored the land, animals, and cycles of nature. Mississippian culture constructed massive earthen mound cities in the Midwest. Arctic Inuit communities mastered survival amid ice, sea, and harsh cold. Hundreds of unique languages and governance systems flourished independently. Seasonal harvests brought communities together for celebration and thanksgiving. Storytellers passed down rich oral histories and creation myths. Skilled artisans crafted beautiful pottery, baskets, and ceremonial objects. Young warriors trained in hunting skills and tribal traditions. Women held important roles in agriculture, medicine, and community leadership. Vast networks of footpaths connected communities across the continent. Sacred sites and natural landmarks held deep spiritual significance. Fishing and canoe travel defined life along rivers and coasts. Bison provided food, clothing, and tools for plains peoples. Complex astronomical knowledge guided planting and ceremonial calendars. Diverse regional diets reflected local environments and resources. Intertribal alliances formed for trade, protection, and diplomacy. Children learned skills through play and guided instruction. Elders commanded respect as keepers of wisdom and history. Seasonal migrations followed animal herds and ripening plants. Artistic expressions adorned clothing, tools, and ceremonial items. Harmony with nature shaped sustainable ways of living. Powerful orators addressed councils on matters of importance. Games and competitions strengthened community bonds and skills. Rich cultural diversity defined the continent before outside contact. In 1492, European ships first appeared on the horizon. Christopher Columbus made landfall in the Bahamas, changing history forever. Spanish explorers soon mapped Caribbean islands and mainland coasts. Early encounters brought trade, but also initial misunderstandings. Spanish settlements like St. Augustine became the first permanent outposts. French explorers navigated northern rivers and claimed vast territories. English voyages sought northwest passages and new fishing grounds. Initial contacts introduced new technologies and deadly diseases. European powers competed for resources and strategic footholds. The Columbian Exchange transformed both old and new worlds profoundly. In 1607, English settlers founded Jamestown in Virginia. Harsh conditions and disease tested the first colonists severely. Tobacco cultivation eventually brought economic hope to Virginia. The 1620 Mayflower brought pilgrims to Plymouth Rock. The first Thanksgiving celebrated survival and harvest with Wampanoag. Puritan colonies expanded in New England with strict religious codes. Middle colonies attracted diverse settlers with fertile farmlands. Southern colonies developed plantation economies based on cash crops. African slaves were brought to labor on growing plantations. Colonial cities like Boston and Philadelphia began to flourish. Education and printing presses spread ideas across the colonies. Relations with native nations involved both alliances and conflicts. The Great Awakening revived religious fervor in the mid-18th century. Enlightenment ideas influenced colonial thinkers and leaders. British policies after the French and Indian War strained relations. The Stamp Act sparked widespread colonial protests and boycotts. Committees of correspondence coordinated resistance across colonies. The Boston Massacre heightened tensions with British troops. The Boston Tea Party defied British authority dramatically. The Intolerable Acts closed Boston Harbor and increased control. The First Continental Congress met to coordinate colonial response. Minutemen prepared for possible conflict in New England towns. Paul Revere rode to warn of approaching British forces. Shots fired at Lexington and Concord began the Revolutionary War. The Battle of Bunker Hill showed colonial resolve despite losses. George Washington took command of the Continental Army. The Declaration of Independence was adopted in 1776. British forces occupied New York after early American defeats. Washington's surprise crossing of the Delaware boosted morale. Victory at Trenton and Princeton kept the revolution alive. The alliance with France provided crucial military support. Harsh winter at Valley Forge forged a more disciplined army. Baron von Steuben trained the troops in European tactics. The British Southern Campaign met fierce partisan resistance. Victory at Yorktown in 1781 secured independence. The Treaty of Paris formally ended the Revolutionary War. The young nation faced economic struggles under the Articles of Confederation. Shays' rebellion highlighted weaknesses in the central government. Delegates gathered in Philadelphia to draft a new constitution. The Constitution created a stronger federal system with checks and balances. The Bill of Rights protected individual liberties and was ratified. George Washington became the first president in 1789. Hamilton's financial plans stabilized the new nation's economy. The Whiskey Rebellion tested federal authority in the West. The Louisiana Purchase doubled America's territory in 1803. Lewis and Clark led the Corps of Discovery to map the West. Sacagawea provided crucial guidance and translation on the journey. The expedition reached the Pacific Ocean after years of hardship. The War of 1812 defended American shipping rights. The burning of Washington tested national resolve. The Battle of New Orleans boosted Andrew Jackson's fame. The Monroe Doctrine warned Europe against further colonization. Westward migration increased along the Oregon and Santa Fe trails. The Trail of Tears forcibly relocated Cherokee and other tribes. Texas declared independence from Mexico after the Alamo. The Mexican-American War added California and the Southwest. The 1849 gold rush drew thousands to California. 49ers endured harsh journeys and difficult mining conditions. Slavery debates intensified as new states joined the Union. The Compromise of 1850 temporarily eased sectional tensions. The Kansas-Nebraska Act led to violent conflict in Bleeding, Kansas. The Dred Scott decision deepened national divisions over slavery. John Brown's raid at Harper's Ferry alarmed the South. Abraham Lincoln won the presidency in 1860. Southern states seceded, forming the Confederate States of America. The Civil War began with the attack on Fort Sumter. First Bull Run shattered hopes of a quick Union victory. The Monitor and Merrimack battle introduced ironclad warships. Antietam became the bloodiest single day in American history. Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation after Antietam. African-American soldiers joined the Union Army in growing numbers. The Battle of Gettysburg turned the tide in the East. Lincoln delivered the Gettysburg Address honoring the fallen. Grant's Vicksburg campaign split the Confederacy. Sherman's march through Georgia devastated the Confederate heartland. Lee surrendered to Grant at Appomattox in 1865. Lincoln's assassination shocked the nation days after victory. Reconstruction began rebuilding the South and integrating freed people. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery permanently. Black codes and resistance challenged Reconstruction gains. The Transcontinental Railroad connected East and West in 1869. The Golden Spike completed the first transcontinental line. Industrial factories transformed cities and created new wealth. Immigrants arrived in massive waves seeking opportunity. Tenement housing in cities housed the growing urban poor. Robber barons built vast industrial empires and fortunes. Labor unions fought for better wages and working conditions. The Haymarket Affair highlighted labor tensions. The Spanish-American War made America a global power. Theodore Roosevelt led the Rough Riders in Cuba. Progressive reformers tackled corruption and social issues. Women gained the right to vote with the 19th Amendment. World War I began in Europe, drawing American attention. The Lusitania sinking increased calls for American involvement. American doughboys joined the fight in 1917. The Meuse-Argonne Offensive helped end the war. The Treaty of Versailles reshaped the post-war world. The Roaring Twenties brought jazz, cars, and cultural change. Prohibition created underground economies and speakeasies. The Harlem Renaissance celebrated black arts and culture. The stock market crash of 1929 ended prosperity. The Great Depression brought widespread unemployment and hardship. Dust Bowl storms devastated Great Plains farms. Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal offered relief and reform. Social security and labor rights emerged from New Deal programs. The New Deal expanded the role of federal government. Isolationism dominated American policy in the 1930s. The attack on Pearl Harbor brought America into World War II. The nation mobilized fully for total war effort. Rosie the Riveter symbolized women's wartime contributions. D-Day invasion launched the liberation of Europe. American forces fought island by island in the Pacific. The Battle of the Bulge tested Allied resolve in winter. Concentration camps revealed the horrors of the Holocaust. The atomic bomb ended the war with Japan in 1945. Victory celebrations filled streets across America. The United Nations formed to promote global peace. The Cold War began as tensions rose with the Soviet Union. The Marshall Plan aided European economic recovery. NATO formed as a collective defense against Soviet influence. The Korean War tested containment policy in Asia. Suburbs boomed with Levittown-style housing developments. The baby boom reshaped American family life. McCarthyism fueled fears of communist infiltration. The civil rights movement challenged segregation in the South. Brown versus Board of Education desegregated public schools. The Little Rock 9 integrated Central High School. Sit-ins at lunch counters protested racial discrimination. Freedom riders challenged segregated interstate travel. Martin Luther King delivered his dream speech in Washington. The March from Selma to Montgomery advanced voting rights. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 banned discrimination. The Voting Rights Act protected black voting access. The space race accelerated after Sputnik. John Glenn orbited Earth in Friendship 7. President Kennedy set the goal of landing on the moon. The Cuban Missile Crisis brought the world to the brink. The Vietnam War escalated with American troop deployments. The Tet Offensive shocked the American public. Apollo 11 achieved the first moon landing in 1969. Counterculture and anti-war movements grew on college campuses. Woodstock Festival symbolized peace and music generation. Nixon resigned amid the Watergate scandal. The 1970s energy crisis affected daily life. The Iran hostage crisis dominated late 70s news. Ronald Reagan's election ushered in conservative policies. The Berlin Wall fell, symbolizing the Cold War's end. The Soviet Union dissolved in 1991. The Gulf War liberated Kuwait from Iraqi invasion. The Internet and personal computers revolutionized communication. The dot-com boom fueled technology investment and growth. The September 11th attacks changed America forever. American forces led the invasion of Afghanistan. The Iraq War began with shock and awe campaign. Hurricane Katrina exposed vulnerabilities in disaster response. The 2008 financial crisis triggered global recession. Barack Obama became the first black president in 2008. Recent years tested the nation with division, innovation, and resilience. In 2026, America stands in the year of its 250th anniversary. The United States reflects on its remarkable journey and embraces the future with renewed purpose. Don't forget to subscribe on your way out. See you next video.